Thank
Well,
you.
I'm very excited to interview you, Cindy. We've known each other a long time,
Yeah.
and I feel like you have a rich, sometimes painful, but quite successful life experience that I am so excited that you'll have a chance to share with the folks viewing this particular Legacy Zoom. So I want to just start out saying you get to introduce yourself any way that you feel is relevant and important to you. So what would you like the viewers to know most about you?
Interesting question. Um, I am a survivor, and while I know that everyone's journey is unique to who they are, I do feel really strongly that because I know it's possible to survive, that that would be something that people would see in me. Like if she can do it, then maybe I could do it.
A survivor of?
Oh my goodness. Um, uh, Being in the foster care system for most of my young life, from the time I was 2 until I was 18, 19, having a really high ACEs score. Um, and I'm hoping that the people that are viewing this kind of know what that is.
They
So
may not. They may not. Can you give them a rough understanding of that?
the adverse childhood experiences was a study, is an ongoing study of the impact of trauma on individuals through the over the lifespan. Um, and I have a pretty high score, which means I'm a survivor of being exposed to domestic violence, having a parent, and maybe even two parents, I don't know, who struggled with mental illness, having a parent who was incarcerated, uh, uh, sexual abuse, physical abuse, just a lot of chaos in the first, I want to say 15 years of my life, at least. So I survived that. Um, and then after that, stability in a foster home, actually, for a couple of years, probably two of the most stable years I had as a kid. Um, so um, that, and as we know that even if a child gets placed in a stable, loving home, that doesn't make the things that happened before go away.
Yeah.
Right. So as soon as I got out of there, I was a hot mess because nobody had any control over me or influence on me to that was positive. Very few people. Some did. I'm still
You
here.
didn't
So
get it. You didn't get adopted.
no, no, no. And I don't think I would have wanted to. It would have been very different for me if I was in the world in foster care today than the world then. But yeah, so I survived that. Uh, Cancer, recently cancer survivor. And a survivor of working in the public child welfare system, which I think is a whole other trauma of
Yeah.
its own. Um,
Yes.
and
Oh,
so that's what I would want people that are in a similar position to see if she could do it, then maybe I could do it. Their own way, not like me. Everyone's different, but their own way.
yeah. What allowed you to survive? What gave you, I mean, here today you are a licensed therapist doing amazing work and teaching, up and coming therapists and working with social workers in systems.
Mhm.
So what took you from there to here?
Um, Well, it's interesting. I said earlier that I didn't have anyone that had influence or sway over me, and that's not entirely true. Because I had mentors, I had people that really believed in me. My foster parents, the last foster parents that I had, amazing human beings, still in my life. I'm a former foster youth, so I'm not so good at connections. So I'm not very good at staying connected to them, but they're still there, right? I know they're still there. In fact, I'm going to go see them, I think, in a month or so. I have a good excuse. There's a baseball game in Denver I want to go to. So, um, people, teachers, a couple of social workers, Sunday school teachers, neighbors,
Mm.
they made a huge difference, huge difference. And also, you know, and this has nothing to do with me as anything that I did, or that I deserved or earned. I'm smart. I got
Yes.
I got intelligence. That
Mhm.
was a gift of the genetic gift of my parents, probably more my mom, than my dad. But I had an ability to think my way out of situations or into them, as the case may be,
Uh-huh. Okay.
and solve problems. You know, and maybe that was my refuge. School was my refuge.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
such helpful information.
yeah,
And thank you. I know it's very personal.
yeah.
Do you think all this is what drew you into the mental health field?
I did not expect to be emotional doing this interview. I just want you to know. Maybe because I didn't have time to think about it or steel myself. But so it's okay. If
Yeah.
things make me sad or teary, it doesn't mean you have to stop asking it. Um, originally, my original career goal was to be an elementary school teacher.
Uh-huh.
And at the time, um, the field was really glutted. And I was worried about being able to get a job. Uh, So I was also majoring in psychology, and I love that. And I didn't necessarily want to work in fast food or restaurants for the rest of my life. So when I was looking for jobs while I was going to school, I found jobs in the field, working in group homes. And then it just sort of seemed like that was the natural thing I was gonna do. Um, I don't know that I even like had a revelation like, oh, you're gonna be a social worker. Because I think if I would have had that, if someone would have said that, I would have said, "Oh no, I don't really care for social workers."
I'll bet. I'll
Right,
bet. Yeah.
right, right. So yeah, and I think that at some point I probably did make a conscious decision that I'm the kind of social worker that I'm going to be is I'm going to model myself after the ones that I thought were good, that were helpful, and that saw me and really made a difference, and not do the ones that were bad. Right. And in all honesty, I actually had some really good social workers, working in a really messed up system.
What made them good social workers, Cindy?
They didn't quit,
Okay.
right? They stayed
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
They tried, and they had tough kids. I was a tough kid. Um, so I have respect for them that they did that. Some that were horrible, and some that I've worked with as a professional that were just, and some that were amazing, right? That I'm still friends with.
Mm.
So yeah, um, the system is not a place for kids to grow up, and social workers make bad substitute parents,
Mm.
no matter how good they are.
Yeah. Yeah. The
Yeah,
one you said they saw you. How did you know they could see you, acknowledge you as a human being, an individual?
I think that they saw the things that I was interested in, and they tried to nurture those things.
Okay.
They saw that things were hard at home, and they created a safe place for me to be when I couldn't be there. Uh,
Okay.
right up until I actually went to the system without going back. But I did have little surrogate foster homes around the neighborhood, friends that I stayed with. And in fact, back in the day, one of my first foster care experiences that I remember, I was down the street. I went to the same school. My
Wow.
foster sibling was my classmate. Uh, and in fact, the mom, it's interesting, I haven't thought about this in a long time. She had polio. Um, So she was in a wheelchair. She had had polio, like when the polio epidemic happened. And she was in a wheelchair, and she was a great foster mom. And I got to see my mom every day and knew what was going on. And that wasn't so bad. It should all be like that.
Oh, that okay.
Yeah,
Being connected in the same
right,
community was important.
right.
You had siblings. Did you lose your siblings along the way?
Eventually, yeah. Eventually, my sister could not maintain it at home for, she just couldn't. And so she went into care permanently, and then I went a couple years later. So I stayed at home, and she was in care. And there were a couple of times when we were kids that we were separated and we were in different foster homes, and then we would come back home, do the back and forth thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And you have a relationship with your family of origin today?
With my sister, I do. Uh, it's, you know, it's got its cracks, but we love each other, and we talk regularly. She, up until just a few months ago, she lived right down the street from me here in California. She went back to Colorado. But yeah, and I keep in touch with one of her daughters and one of her grandchildren, um, and not so much the rest. They're pretty damaged, and they do damage.
You when with the work that you do you do it then in the world of adoption and permanency? Is that largely your passion?
That's an interesting question because I have a lot of things that I'm passionate about. And this is just one of them,
Oh,
right? It's a really big one, right? It's been my life, my professional life. Uh, and I'm very passionate about it. I want children to be back with their families safely if that's what they can be first. Um, and then I want them to be in permanent loving homes uh, that are as close a cultural and geographic match as can possibly be made
mhm.
to reduce the damage
Uh-huh.
that is done when a child can't be raised by their family. So I'm very passionate about it. Sometimes passionately angry about it. You've
Uh-huh.
seen me
Yes, yes.
passionately angry about it. So it's not the only one, but it's a huge one. It's the I can't think of very many traumas that are more enduring and damaging than adoption and foster care trauma, the loss of your family.
Wow, that's a powerful statement.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what are your other passions? I mean, because
Oh,
I know
goodness.
you to care about so many
Right.
things. Some of them
Trauma, for
are fun.
sure.
Yeah.
Trauma, any kind of trauma. Not
Uh-huh.
that I like lay awake at night and go, oh, I can't wait to talk about trauma tomorrow. But uh, trauma, helping people to recover from their trauma, however that happened,
Mhm.
helping them to learn that whatever happened back then was not their fault, was not about them, right? So that they can heal in all the many ways that we help people to heal in their body, in their soul, in their mind, and have a joyful life.
Mhm.
Because you got the life you got. What are you going to do with it,
Right,
right?
right.
So however that appears in my inbox. Also very passionate about LGBTQI plus issues and serving that population, being a member of it myself. Uh, Anything that can help people to love themselves more so that they can stop hurting other people more and we can live in a better world.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's that's it. So I'm passionate about art, music,
Baseball.
baseball, The Grateful Dead, Doctor Who. Um,
Okay.
and in fact, I'm finding ways for the Doctor Who world and my mental health world to merge, because a lot of the people that are fans of anime or Doctor Who or science fiction that go to the conventions also struggle with feeling they're on the outside of society. There's a lot of anxiety, a lot of folks that are on the autism spectrum, a lot of depression, and a
Uh-huh.
lot of LGBTQI plus folks. And there's organizations that go in and provide mental health support during the conventions.
I didn't know that. What
Yes.
an interesting thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So I'm passionate about lots of things. Horse therapy, um,
Yes.
uh,
Yeah.
and they all seem to sort of intersect and overlap. In fact, I volunteer at a therapeutic horse riding center, and I found out about it through my adoption world because the program manager there is an adopted mom that adopted through Kinship Center, and the director is uh, just really committed and passionate about adoption and foster care and helping kids with attachment issues. So I've gone and consulted with them on some of their riders that have attachment stuff going on, and horses are wonderful to attach to with,
Yeah.
right? Um,
Well, and you also chose to become an adoptive parent.
mhm.
And how that came about for you, I find incredibly wonderful, and it shows your passion and commitment. And I wonder if you'd be willing to share how you met the children that you adopted.
Yeah. Um, well, I met Andrew, our youngest son, at a place called Hollygrove, which was a residential treatment center in the heart of Hollywood. Its claim to fame is that Marilyn Monroe lived there. And people are like, wow, not a success story, actually.
Yes.
He had a
Yeah.
really hard life. So I met him there. It was my first real job in the social work field. It was before I had my master's. I worked as a childcare worker there, and talk about mentors and people that saw me. The director of Hollygrove at the time, his name is Paul Case, and I believe he is still alive. I see him on social media. He's still with us. Um, when he was a young social work student attending the University of Chicago, somebody there saw him and mentored him and helped him to pay for his graduate education. Uh, and
Wow.
he had spent his professional career looking for somebody that he could do that for, that he could pay that forward for.
Wow.
I haven't thought about this in a long time either. And so he went to their board of directors and he said, I want us to do this for this employee. And they did. Uh, and I knew that the president of the board also, like I was there, I was going to school. I wanted to be a social worker, and he came to me and said, we'll give you a stipend, we'll give you a place to live, we'll give you a job during the summer and on vacations. You go to school,
Wow.
and then you work for us for a couple of years. It was a no-brainer for me.
Yeah.
Um, so that's what I did. And at the time, Andrew, uh, I don't remember exactly when he moved in there. It must have been like a year or so after I started working there as a childcare worker. And I got to know him as a childcare worker. Didn't think that he would be my son someday. Um, and as I went through and got my degree, and I worked as a social worker in their foster care program, and I placed him in a home. He was a rubber bouncing ball kid. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
All over the place. And just a little handful. And this family, they tried, they really, really tried, and they couldn't do it. He has fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. He was prenatally exposed to everything, and they couldn't do it. So he went back to Hollygrove. And I was a social worker at the agency, and I knew I couldn't take him. I was worried that he was going to get lost in the system and be homeless on the street one day because of something that his mother did, his birth mom did. And so I went home to my not yet wife. Were we married yet? Maybe we were. No, we weren't. We weren't married yet. I went home to her and I said, hey, there's this great kid at Hollygrove that really needs a volunteer. He had to come back. No, you're not supposed to tell stuff. So I didn't tell her details. I just said, just go sign up, register to be a volunteer. And she did. She did. And
She's also a mental health professional.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And so we got to spend 2 years visiting with him while he was at the group home. Never would they let that happen today.
Uh,
And build this attachment and this relationship with him. And he moved in with us when he was 11.
and how do you feel that they wouldn't let that happen today?
Mixed, mixed because it's long. It's a long time for a kid to wait. But the truth is that he wasn't waiting. He had us. We were waiting for him.
Yeah.
We were waiting for him to really be ready. Um, and it was his choice. So we were waiting for his signs and his words and his actions, and in response to ours as well. I mean, he didn't have to be perfectly ready,
Yeah.
but we didn't want to set him up for another feeling like he was going to fail again.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of time to build that relationship. So by the time he moved in, it was like it's about time, right? So today, it seems like every case is treated the same in a lot of ways, and what 2 years is what Andrew needed when another kid could be ready in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Um, so that, I don't think we would have been able to do that. Would we have taken him anyway if we were rushed? If it was a concurrent planning situation? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Would we have gone through it? Yeah, in that 2 years, because we went through it afterwards, right? We knew. But yeah, and then my other son, our other son, is actually Andrew's half brother, and they were separated and placed in separate homes because the woman who adopted Troy was a psychologist, and she thought that Troy was gifted and perfect, and Andrew was flawed and damaged, and he wouldn't be able to learn, and he wouldn't, so she wanted to. I think she saw Troy as a project, and I'm sad about it now. I'm not as angry as I used to be. My son is still angry about it, and and so we had visits with him. We would have supervise these visits. Well, eventually it came out that she didn't like that Andrew had two moms, and she put controls on the visits, and we weren't able to see him for a very long time until he turned 18, and we knew that legally we could look for him, which we did almost right away. Let me think. He turned 18 the year that the Angels won the World Series. They won the World Series in I can't remember what it was, in July. I think that we found him in that month. So it was the month that the Angels won the World Series. Um, and over a period of years, you know a lot of the story. We just brought him into our heart and into our life, and we were able to adopt him as an adult at 23. And now we're proud grandparents of 12-year-old, and we have a wonderful daughter-in-law. Our son Andrew is his marriage did not survive the COVID epidemic, but he's doing really well, and he has a wonderful girlfriend, and we're all not just surviving, we're thriving. Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking about all of the folks watching this. And, you've seen the system from the inside out and the outside in. What would be the lessons that would be really important for professionals or parents to learn from you, both your therapeutic side and your personal side? What do you want to make sure that people watching this come away with as lessons from Cindy Rowe?
Well, something that I didn't mention, and it relates to your question, is that I also have a biological half brother
Yes.
who found us after my mom's death. He found the obituary. He found us. And it was right at the same time that we were reunifying the boys with their birth mom. and it was really emotional time. So we kind of waited to connect with Jim. So it was a couple of years after he reached out to us that I was able to reach out and connect with him. Um, and I won't say too much about that, except to say that we are not in contact now. I do think that he talks to my sister. He was expecting to find his mother, I believe, and he found me and my sister. And it's not been quite enough. And I don't know if you can tell from this interview, but I have a strong personality. I can sometimes be prickly, um, and so can he.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I think that we're a lot like each other. We're a lot like our mom,
Yeah.
uh, and and it's just not worked out. And I don't see a path for it to work out, sadly. And I'm okay with that because I have a full busy life. I'm in my 60s. I got a second lease on life with the cancer scare. I don't invite complications into my life these days. And I think people can relate to that.
Yeah.
But what I will say is the system, as it's been designed and as it's worked over the years, even from the time my brother was born in 1954, in a state that had open adoption records. And it's thanks to you, Sharon, that he was able to get all of that.
Mm.
Uh, he didn't know. He didn't know. He grew up in the secret society of adoption, where generations of people, my mother kept a secret, my grandparents kept a secret, my aunts kept a secret, my uncles, cousins that knew kept that secret for 50 years.
Wow.
Um, and even when I called my cousin, who was the closest to my mom, she was my mom's person. She still is, and she's my person now. When I asked her, she was so loyal to my mom that she didn't want to tell me
That you had this
that
brother.
I had this brother. But she did. She did. She felt really bad. Like, I love Cindy. I want to tell her. I love Carol. I told her I wouldn't tell.
Mhm.
Right. So, but she told. And so, what I want to say is this secret system is killing people.
Yes.
It keeps people away from their family.
Yes.
It kills people. If my mom in her, I'm sorry, if my mom in her life at that point could have made a choice, and maybe adoption was the best choice for her. But if she could have said, okay, I'll make this choice because it's the best choice for me, but I will not be completely cut off from my son. If she could have said that, and if his dad could have said that, because both my mom and my brother's biological dad went down a path of alcoholism and drug abuse and neglect of their children, and it's all connected,
Yeah.
right? So, and don't get me started. I mean, if we could stop this secrecy. I remember the American Adoption Congress conference that we went to where Daryl McDaniels was there,
Right.
and he was pounding on the podium, stop the lying and the secrets.
Right.
And how many years later, 20 years later, we're still saying the same thing.
Carol
50
McDaniel,
years
like
ago.
Run DMC.
Yes, yes. Who grew up in the not knowing he was adopted and nearly killed himself.
Right.
Uh, so separating from your family. I had a Sunday school teacher. We talked about mentors who, when I was first placed at the SAP, their name is SAP, SAPP, in Denver, social worker told me that I could not see my family for a month or talk to them. And I was not a very good rule follower, which you know that about me, Sharon. Even then, still now, not a good rule follower. So um, I called my Sunday school teacher and said, don't you want to invite me over for dinner? And my foster parents knew exactly what I was doing, that I was gonna have dinner with my Sunday school teacher. My Sunday school teacher dropped me off at my sister's house, and I had dinner with her.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
and then she picked me up and brought me home. And as far as the social worker knew, I had not had contact with my family, and there was no reason for it. No reason for it. It was not unsafe.
So
and
you
it made no
talk a
sense.
lot about the secrecy and the cutoffs and the lack of honoring the voices of
Right,
young people impacted in this system.
right,
And you've gone out of your way to make sure that your boys had each other, that they had their birth mother, that they had other siblings, that a father has been found
yeah,
for Troy, a birth father. It doesn't always work out.
yeah,
And yet it fills in the blanks in a way that helps identity become more solid.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And you don't stop it just because you had one bad experience, right? Or
Yeah.
one not so good experience. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. It's very complicated. And we've had nights of grown men crying like babies in our house,
Yeah.
because of these losses that were so unnecessary,
Right.
so unnecessary, and years and experiences that you can't get back.
So when you're not here anymore, what words would you want said about you at a eulogy or written on your tombstone? What would the wisdom be that you'd want left behind that would represent you best?
That's a tough one. Part of me wants to be funny.
You can be funny.
um,
That is an element of you.
right.
You have a great sense of humor, and I
Well, I
think it
certainly
helps.
do have a good sense of humor. I know how to laugh. I know how to have a good time.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to cry. Um, I want at least one person to say that I did something that helped change their lives in a positive way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know what's really funny is I've had that experience when I wasn't expecting it from somebody, that I met at a resort, like someone who worked at this resort that I went to, and then we went back the next year or a couple of years later, and he said, "You said something that changed my life." I'm like, wow. What did I say? So if there's at least one, that I made that difference for. And I know it doesn't make up for trauma. It doesn't make up for the bad things that happen. Um, and that's not why I do it, because that doesn't work that way. But that just moving forward, that the damage doesn't come from me. Healing comes from me, not damage. That's what I want him to remember.
Cindy, I would love to talk with you for several more hours because you have so much wisdom. Thank you for sharing from your heart and sharing your tears, um, and your sense of humor and your commitment and your passion for the field. And I'm sure that if the system was put in your hands, you would shake it upside down and destroy it and start with a whole new way of doing things in both public and private environments. So don't give up, keep fighting.
Oh
Uh,
no,
yeah,
I'm
because
gonna keep doing what I do. Maybe not full time,
yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah,
we need you.
yeah. Thank
I,
you.
I want to thank you so much for the interview and really for the strong and honest and open-hearted emotions. So thank you. I hope you get a little rest after this interview and
I will. It's my day off.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
go play and have
This was
fun.
fun. Sorry, Graham. You could do some touch up or something, make me look good.
But there's no shame
No.
in opening yourself in that way publicly
Yeah.
because I think it's what makes you the strong therapist that you are and the strong advocate that you are. So
I have
thank
a T-shirt. It's my favorite T-shirt. It's put out by oh shoot, I'm gonna forget his name. The guy from Red Hot Chili Peppers, and anyway, it says shame never saved anybody.
you.
And I tell my patients, my clients all the time, like we gotta we gotta stop that shame before it takes a hold of you. Um,
That's a
so
great tagline for this interview.
yeah, shame
Thank
never
everybody.
saved anybody.
Wow.
And yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
thank
Thank
you,
you. Thank
thank
you.
you.
Have a good rest of the day.
I will. I
Yeah.
will. Thanks, Graham.